Hi everyone, my name is Govinda and I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be talking through my favourite books so far, so I'm really excited to get into this one. There's 9 books in total and I thought I'd get started with the book that I think of when I think of what's my most favourite book, and that's Daisy Jones and the Six. So I read this in April of 2020. I read it in a day. I was doing gardening, I remember. I was listening to the audiobook, but I had been so excited to get into this one because the plot, and honestly it's an amazing book. Till this day I follow a Twitter account that puts out randomly quotes from the book. I find it very beautiful. It's an amazing book. I recommend it so much. It tells the story of Daisy Jones and the Six, which is a Fleetwood Mac-esque band, and Daisy Jones is like the Stevie Nicks of the group, and it kind of tells the story from a reunion perspective where everyone's giving interviews about their time in the band. So you're almost listening to it as a series of interviews or like maybe even a podcast. And it is an amazing book. It's just an amazing journey. The lives that they go through. It's kind of, I mean, with Taylor Jenkins Reid, she kind of writes books that I think have been written specifically for me, because this is an amazing book to read. Daisy Jones as a character is what I kind of aspire to be like that it girl movement, the kind of ethereal goddess kind of thing, but it's very tragic and beautiful and compelling and fun at the same time. So when it comes to this, literally after I read this, there is a video of me being speechless because I couldn't even describe how beautiful I found it. So this is a great one to start off with. Another Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I think was written specifically for me is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. The Elizabeth Taylorness, the queerness, the everything in this is beautiful. It's an amazing story that I'm so shocked hasn't been turned into like a movie or a TV series, but I think keeping with this, it should be a movie. It's an amazing book. At first I gave it a 4 stars and then I reread it and I gave it a 5 stars. I think because this is so written for me, I went in not wanting to like it, because that's my personality trait. If something's for me and perfect for me, I'm not gonna like it. But when I read it my second time, I kind of conceded that I needed to give it a 5 stars because it is a really, really beautiful read. It tells the story of Evelyn Hugo, this actress in kind of the golden age, and her 7 husbands and 7 different marriages. It's a really, really beautiful story with a lot of heart behind it, with the twists and turns, but I think it tells a really, really compelling love story at the same time. There is a love story in this. I think maybe if you're looking outwards and see this headline or title of The Seven Husbands, you're kind of expecting mess, and it is, but it tells a really, really beautiful love story, but it also tells love in friendships as well. That like the love story romantic is kind of the big lead, but also the love story in different friendships and everything like that. And parenthood is quite beautiful in this. So yeah, this is number 5. So one of my toxic traits is I want to be provoked by emotion. I want things to test me, and my reading is the same. I had never cried to a book before, and I wanted that because I am an easy crier. I cry quite a bit. And well, it's kind of like I cry easily and then I don't cry at all sometimes. It's a funny relationship, but I never cried to a book before. And when I read Red, White and Royal Blue, I was crying. This was the first book to ever make me cry, but it's also a really good concept. It has been a while since I read this, but from what I remember, it follows, I think it's the Prince of Wales and the President of America's son in their love story, and it just obviously goes through a lot of text messages and it goes through that love story, and then yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but it goes through a lot. There's a lot in this. If you haven't read this, read it. It's an amazing book. I would say if you haven't read any of these, read them, but this is a really, really good book. First book that made me cry, and that sticks with me, so it's definitely a favourite. Okay, so these next two books really shaped the reader that I am, and in my teen years, these were my books: The Fault in Our Stars and The Hunger Games. So The Fault in My Stars, I've read 3 times, given it 5 stars. I remember seeing an article of books that Sagittariuses need to read. I'm a Sagittarius myself, and this was in it, and I think it played to what I want and who I am really well. It has an adventure in this, it has a love story, but also a very hard fought love story. In a sense, it's a love story that, because these two people are suffering with cancer, that you might be in that phase in your life and might be that young, having that phase in your life, that you kind of want to pass upon love, but these people live their love life to a beautiful setting and beautiful way, that there's no defeat in this, and it's really, really beautiful. And it also just tells, I mean, I read this recently, this is my most recent read, it kind of tells, like, no matter what you're going through in life, you should live it beautifully and not care, because like life is so fickle. So this is an amazing read, and at the age of when I was reading this, I think 16, it was my everything, and it broke my heart in the same way, and the movie had such an impact on me. I remember going to Amsterdam and living my The Fault in Our Stars realness dream. So that was beautiful. And the next book is probably one of my earliest like adventures into reading, The Hunger Games. It was a big thing when I was a teenager to read this. It's very dystopian, which I think kind of shaped the way that this generation acted, my generation, and kind of our tastes of everything, and kind of the setting for us were very like realistic. But yeah, this is very, very beautiful. I've recently got back into writing, which is like my love, but I am one of these readers where I love romantic stories, but when I write, for some reason I can only write books that are heartbreaking and, you know, got death and murder in them and are very like tragic, even though that's not my reading style. And I think it's because of books like The Hunger Games setting my like reading taste and writing taste also, because I love Susan Collins. She can do no wrong writing wise for me. Segueing off from like dark books and dark writing styles, the next one is my Dark Vanessa. I did a video a while back where I bought the first 5 books I saw on Book Talk, and this was one of them. Went into this completely unaware of any idea of the plot. Basically it follows, I think it's a university student called Vanessa, who has this relationship with one of her teachers, but at the same time you're living in the now timeline where this teacher is having a lot of like allegations come out about them. It's very real, this, because it goes through Vanessa's actual thoughts and feelings at the time, and even like in the present day, a lot of the stuff that she's going with. I mean, sometimes it might be easier to presume, or it might be easier to write that now she's come to a realization, but it's not that. It's her juggling and battling with the different emotions at the time of it happening, and in the real world as well, which I found beautiful. This was my summer read last year, which, because it is dark, people might think, why not read like summer, like a beachy read? But I read this last year and it was amazing. After reading this, I had something that I've never had with reading before. I kind of needed to take a break because it was so good, and because it was so all-encompassing in my life. Like, I felt like my life was like based around it. I kind of needed to take a break, not in like a bad way where it put me in a reading slump, or not a way that I was conscious of, but like kind of a way of just coming to reality with the book, and then also finishing the chapter of the book in my head as well. So yeah, it was a lot. In 2019, my reading was probably at its peak with the amount of books I was finishing, and my favourite book of the year was The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This actually led me to one of my favourite writers, which is Angie Thomas. That being said, I actually do need to read The Concrete Rose, which is set in the universe of the Hate You Give series. I mean, they might be in the same universe, I don't know, but the Hate You Give was my first segue into her and my first book in her writing. It was an amazing book. It tells a very true and raw story of the main characters whose name I can't remember because it's been that long. The reason why I would suggest it to someone who's a teenager or early 20s because it's told from that perspective, and I think it's something that you really benefit from reading it at that time in your life. But it deals with some really adult themes, but it's told well, and I think that's something that Angie Thomas does. She tells you a story really, really well, and she deals with very complex and real world scenarios like race and everything like that, but she tells it so well. She's such an amazing author. I love her to pieces. Okay, so the next one is The Handmaid's Tale. I read this year, and prior to that I actually watched the TV show, which I got in and out of watching just because it's hard to access for me, but also it is very heavy. I remember when I first had COVID watching this and I was like, well, this is a bit too much. I don't know why I chose that for myself, but this is an amazing book. I've just realised the majority of these books are actually written by women. I think the only one that's not is by John Green, so I love that for me. And I think most of them, bar one, are actually told from women's perspectives. Yeah, just some interesting observations there. But this is a really good book. I feel like, unfortunately, the world that we're in, lately at least, you can read this book and it relates to the real world a lot, because unfortunately women go through such a hard time with their rights. Literally, it's disgusting. Reading this book and kind of with the plot line, people might think it's extreme, and obviously it has no relations for them to women's rights, but it does, because the real world is still as cruel to women and still thinks of them somewhat like this. So yeah, I love this book. Margaret Atwood really put me through it with this one, and with that ending I remember just leaving this book and feeling very heavy, and being like, whoa, that was a lot. And then the last book is The Lady of the Rivers by Philippa Gregory. So with this one, it's actually quite an interesting story. I discovered her by just waiting for a friend in a bookstore, and I was like, well, okay, this is quite interesting. I'd always been like really drawn to, I don't know why, the women of Tudor England and kind of and their stories. And then I saw this and I was like, okay, this is something that I'm interested by. I'll get it. And then I love reading books in series, so that actually wasn't the one that I saw at that bookstore, and I bought that one. I got it on Kindle because I used to be a Kindle reader. This is when I was 17, and I read it. I was a really slow reader back then, so I read her bit of her being young, and then kind of put the book away. And then when I got into reading at university, I picked it up and kind of finished it. But I started from when she left where she was and when she was a child to when she kind of like gone into England, and was like more of an adult. And it was actually quite interesting because I felt like I took that break with her. So I read it when she was young, and then I picked it back up when I was the same age, or like in that same kind of timeline in my life as she was in hers. And it was so interesting from that perspective, kind of reading it. I mean, it is a really good book. I enjoy Philippa Gregory. I know there's a lot of people that don't, because people are like, oh, this didn't actually happen, but I love this perspective she takes. She's not trying to be like authentic, she's trying to tell her story in this. But yeah, I love her and I love that book. I love the character of Jaquetta. I love the whole kind of like storyline. It has a lot of significance to me. I would never want to tattoo in my life because I'm very indecisive against inflicting pain on myself, but if there ever was a tattoo that I'd want, it'd be a tattoo of the tarot card of the Wheel of Fortune because of this book. But no, I really enjoyed that one. Going through all these books is actually quite making me like emotional and sentimental. They're the books that are my favourite books. 9 of my favourite books. Obviously you can see they mean a lot to me. I'm not picking them up again because they're heavy. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you think about picking up one of these books, because if they mean as much to you as they did to me, then I know you'll definitely enjoy them. As always, please do like, comment and subscribe, but for now, bye.